Good morning, Meteorologist Mike Linden here, coming at you live from the MyRadar studio here in Orlando, Florida. It is coming up on 9:30 Eastern here on Sunday, August 29th, and it is all things Hurricane Ida, which right now is bearing down on the Louisiana coastline as a Category 4, that being a major hurricane with estimated, or maximum sustained winds, I should say, of 150 miles per hour. This is a rapidly intensifying storm, and it is moving very quickly. Look at the MyRadar app, and you can see right now that the general eye of this storm is sitting just off of the coastline there of southeastern Louisiana. Now, keep in mind that these hurricanes, these big storms, they want to stay over warm water. If you remember from a few years back, Hurricane Harvey that impacted the city of Houston, that was wobbling between the Gulf and land. Not to say that this will be the same thing. It just goes to show you that these big systems, these massive engines of heat, want to remain over the water. So remains to be seen whether or not this is going to slow down over the next couple of hours. But needless to say, that this particular storm, Ida, is really hitting the gas pedal here, not only intensifying in strength, but also in movement as well. And of course, we have got you covered on all things Ida. Let us know in the chat where you are watching from. And of course, team coverage continues here on MyRadar. And it wouldn't be, of course, a MyRadar broadcast if it weren't be a lot of activity happening for somebody's first day. Gotta love that. And we would like to welcome now to the team Meteorologist Erica Lopez. You might have seen her earlier this week during the midday update with Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson. But Erica, what a first weekend to jump into coverage, huh?
Yeah, crazy first weekend to be here, but of course excited to track Hurricane Ida.
Yes, of course. So let us know, what are you seeing right now as Ida approaches the coastline? I mean, we were looking at this storm last night when wind speeds were just above 105 or so miles per hour. And now look where we are, potentially on the brink of a Category 5.
Yeah, 150 mile per hour winds right now, maximum sustained winds in Ida. Of course, this is a high-end Category 4 hurricane, and it's inching closer to the Louisiana coastline. So just taking a look at our MyRadar app, as you can see, we do have the power outages toggled on. We also have our radar. A couple cool features that if you download the app, you can access right on your phone, whether it be iPhone or Android. But we're going to take a look really quickly at Plaquemines Parish outages. Right now, about 2,500 customers without power. Of course, this is just customers and households. There are more people there that live in these households that may be without power. So watching this closely, and if we also take a look in this blue shaded area, this is Jefferson Parish, and outages about 2,800. And of course, these will start to go up as Ida inches closer to the Louisiana coastline. Of course, we'll keep you updated with all the updates on this, but something cool I also want to show you on the app. So as you can see, the radar is toggled on, but if we go per station, we can actually individualize these radars and pick which radar we want to see. So for example, if we want to go to the radar that's KLIX, near New Orleans, you can see a more detailed look at what the radar is looking there, and then we could even see it loop around. And if we take a look at our track right now, you can even see the categories, category 4 right now, and as it inches closer to the southern Louisiana coastline as it makes landfall. Another cool feature that we can see on here as well is watches and warnings. So if we wanted to toggle off our radar and just look at what watches and warnings we have on right now, we can put those, and zooming out, you can even check on which ones these are exactly. Of course, tornado watches are posted for just west or east of New Orleans. And then we're also seeing, of course, hurricane warnings, tropical storm warnings, and you can see the individual what warnings and watches are issued with just the colors on here. So something else that you can also click on if you wanted more of this updated information. So of course, we're going to go back to our hurricane tracker, and if we just toggle on our radar once again and choose KLIX, which is the New Orleans radar, we can look more detailed on what is happening down there. So let's see. Let's put this back on.
Erica, of course, 16 years ago today was, of course, a pretty significant meteorological day for the state of Louisiana, that being, of course, landfall of Category 3 Hurricane Katrina, of course, creating, I mean, numerous issues with inland flooding. This storm, it's impacting the same geographical area, but as we'll get to here coming up with meteorologist Matthew Cappucci, it is different. We did discuss that earlier today. But Hurricane Ida's pressure, its central pressure, down now to 935 HPA here. So we're talking about an incredibly strong storm that continues to intensify. And as you mentioned, looking on the per station feature there, the Pro Radar pack in the app there, I mean, the eye is so well defined sitting off the coastline there.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. And so, of course, we're watching this very closely. Like Mike said, pressure, you can see it even here on this update, 930 millibars with 150 mile per hour winds. And we're going to keep tracking this, of course, throughout the rest of today.
All right, Erica, what a great way to get your life at MyRadar here started off with a storm like Ida. Wild stuff. Erica, thank you so much. We will continue to be checking back in with you throughout the rest of the morning. And the folks in the chat seem to love you. So Erica, welcome to the team. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll jump back here in just a moment. All right, lots to get to here with team coverage here, folks. What we're going to do now is bring in somebody that we spoke with earlier this morning with meteorologist Jamie Martin. Of course, what a rock star he is, huh? Working late last night and early this morning. But we are going to bring in yet another meteorological rock star. This is Washington Post contributor, meteorologist Matt Cappucci. Matt, you are let alone a rock star, a meteorological rock star, but a social media rock star as well. I don't know when you ever sleep, if and whenever. But we're so glad to have you this morning.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, I take a little power naps every single time I blink, but that's about it. I was up at 2:30 in the morning tracking this for someone in the UK, and I'm here this morning doing the same, and so glad to be with you. But we do have a serious situation unfolding in Louisiana right now. The ice is about 25 miles offshore of Grand Isle, and Grand Isle is a community that is really not in good shape. For this ish hours before it finally impacts land, but we're talking about winds likely 150 miles per hour. And if we take a look at street level, we'll be able to show you a lot of these homes, yes, they're on stilts, but some aren't. And when we talk about a 10-15 foot storm surge, you're seeing something really significant that will likely inundate a number of structures there. Already we are seeing a storm surge. We can take a look at a couple stations near the coast. For example, one of them, this one in Pilot Station East, looks like about a 4.5 foot storm surge and already climbing. And keep in mind, the red is what we're seeing right now. Blue is predicted tidal levels. When we see the red exceeding the blue, that means that's a storm surge, and that's an inundation over ordinarily dry ground. We shift east a little bit to Port Fauchon near Belle Pass. You can see a similar surge, right around 2.7 feet thus far. But Grand Isle itself has a storm surge, looks like about 3-ish feet. But already reports that the main road in and out of Grand Isle is blocked. And even refreshing this, we're seeing now a 3.1 foot surge, and that is climbing and will climb markedly. One thing I'm noticing on radar in the MyRadar app is that there's a bit of a moat of slightly drier air and therefore lesser winds around the eye wall. And people may let their guards down. You can't do that. I've chased hurricanes before. I know Aaron, who we'll speak with in a few minutes, is a veteran in this field. And he can tell you that it's a world of difference outside the eye wall versus in. Outside, it's a gusty day with tropical rain showers. Inside the eye wall, it's absolute hell with winds gusting upwards of 130 miles an hour and tornado-like wind speeds. On satellite, you can kind of see what's going on right now. This perfect spiral, for the most part, is really spinning out like this. And when you see structure this crisp, this perfect spiral, that's a sign of a very bad storm. We call it the Fibonacci spiral. And basically, it connotes radial inflow. As the air pressure changes more dramatically as you go into the storm, we have that missing air. The winds accelerate even more. It's just like when you flush a toilet or turn on a sink. That water starts to spiral faster and faster as the slope of that surface changes. And that's exactly what we're seeing in the middle right there, that eye, very ominous. We'll take a look at recon data in just a second, but I want to show you one more shot of that eye. You can see the ground. We have a lot of sinking air in there in the middle, pushing down, preventing clouds from forming. And that's why we have that oasis of calm amidst a donut of cataclysmic fury, if you will. I'll take a look at some of the recon data, too, to show you what the hurricane hunters have found. Air pressures in the 930s. Ordinary sea level air pressure is right around 1015, and so that represents a roughly 7 to 8% void, if you will, a 7 to 8% deficit in air pressure. And that's why it almost creates this vacuum effect in the lower atmosphere. Picture if you went to the top of the Empire State Building, that air pressure up there, because of that missing air, the air that's below you, that's kind of how it would feel inside the storm. And as a result of that missing air, air outside is rushing in to fill the gap, and that's why we see such remarkable low air pressure inside those hurricanes. I'll take a look at a couple diagrams I made in the past little while. For starters, I want to show you this one right here. We have this dropsonde released recently inside the eye of the storm, and you can see a couple things. So green is dew point, red is temperature.
Yes,
and when those two are close to each other, like at the lower levels of the storm, that represents saturated air. When they're far apart in the upper levels, that represents dry air. And you'll notice the air temperature actually increases in the upper levels, and the dew point goes down. So you have hot, dry air. That doesn't sound tropical, but instead this is right in the eye. And there's so much air from the upper levels being pushed down, sinking in the eye to clear out the eye, a signature, really a portent of an extremely intense storm, that it's sinking, warming, and drying out, which really represents that fury of the storm. And right around 800 millibars on the left, you see that 800 level, that's kind of that difference between the low-level tropical air and the upper-level hot, dry air. And when we see that, that's really a sign of just an intense storm, and one that I think is really remarkable. Like we said, about 8% of the air is missing. Another thing I want to point out, too, the hurricane hunters fly on something called a constant pressure altitude, meaning they fly right around a certain air pressure level. That means they have to fly up and down to adjust, so they're at that level. But notice in the little red circles, they encountered significant turbulence there, which meant they couldn't even fly on that pressure level. There were variations, perturbations up and down. And so whenever you see those lines, that represents they're kind of being jostled around quite a bit, which is remarkable to see. One other thing we talked about, of course, the surge, and really Grand Isle could be in a pretty bad shape considering how much surge there likely will be and the fact that the infrastructure there, even though it's built to handle some surge, isn't built to handle all of it. Recent recon observations, you can see there's that warm core right here. Temperature spiking dramatically inside the storm with about looks like a 15-degree Fahrenheit increase inside the storm. Hurricanes really are heat engines. They're remarkable. Air pressure just bottoms out along with the wind inside the storm. Earlier on, we had kind of a dual maxima, or dual minimum rather, in the winds. It's looking a little crisper right now, and you'll notice flight level wind speeds right around 130 knots, so that's 150 miles per hour. Likely similar winds near the surface. We can look at something called the SFMR, which uses the state of the sea. It looks down at it's a microwave radiometer, basically looks down and sees how angry the seas are and tries to ascribe that to a wind speed.
So, Matt, I've just got to jump in here. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, for the folks that are watching, listening, by the way, Matt does not have a script. None of that was written down. that is off the top. That is off the top of the dome. He is a wealth of information. I wanted to stop you because you said so many awesome things there. I mean, a wealth of information here, but I want to talk to you about the winds. Before we started broadcasting here, we were talking about the extreme wind warning that was issued for New Orleans that was put out earlier today by the National Weather Service. We're talking about some pretty intense winds here. This is a relatively new product from the National Weather Service. Can you talk about what this means for the folks that live on the ground, particularly those that are going to be dealing, with the worst that Mother Nature has to offer coming up later this afternoon? No worries.
It is an absolute last resort. People in that area hopefully have been evacuated, but if they haven't, this is pretty much your final call before winds of 115 to 130 plus miles per hour move in. It was actually created out of necessity back during Hurricane Charlie on August 13, 2004 in Florida. Forecasters were seeing the eye wall move ashore with these extreme winds, and they didn't know what to do. And so for anyone who was left behind, they issued a tornado warning saying, hey, it's not a tornado, but tornado-like wind speeds are coming. And they did that 11 times during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. I spoke with Robert Ricks, who was the forecaster there, who issued some of those warnings. And they said it was really kind of a last resort. And now we're doing it again. This time, the Weather Service created an actual product called the Extreme Wind Warning for Category 3 plus eye walls of winds of 115 miles per hour or greater. And it's issued for these high-end events. We saw it issued during Hurricane Harvey, during Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico in 2017. We saw that issued for Irma as well, and last year for Hurricane Laura. I was inside one. And basically same actions as a tornado warning. The difference in this particular event is that near the coastline, a lot of those areas will be flooded, so you won't be able to go below ground. You won't even be able to go into the lower levels of your home because they will likely be inundated. So hopefully folks here have evacuated. If they haven't, they should plan for absolutely horrendous winds and really try to hunker down, luckily with a mattress or a pillow on top of them and an interior bathtub on the higher floor of their home, I guess, because they can't really go to the lowest floor if it's flooding. That's one of the issues and why we try to get people to go inland, because near the coast, you're not just dealing with one or two hazards. You're dealing with surge, you're dealing with flooding, you're dealing with extreme winds, and the actions that you need to take kind of contradict one another, both going below ground to shelter from tornado strength winds, but also getting as high as you can to avoid the surge. So nobody should be left there. We learned recently that 28 people at least have remained on a Grand Isle, which is just a,
bad idea.
To use a non-technical term, a bonehead move. You're putting your life at risk by staying out there, and hopefully people have heeded the warnings because this has been a very well forecast event.
Not to mention, in that particular situation, if you are under evacuation orders, you reach out to emergency services. You're now putting their lives at risk if they're even going to come and help you at that point. I mean, this is not anything to mess around with, especially when you're talking about all of the products we've seen issued this morning, all of the rapid intensification that's gone on overnight last night and into this morning. And I think I've got to hope, Matt, that this area, this part of the country, especially after an incredibly active season like last year, is prepared for what is to come here over the next hour or so. But you've been awesome this morning. Matt, is there anything else that you want to mention before we let you go? Grab some sleep?
Yeah, a quick little power nap. I think one thing worth mentioning, too, is that when these eye walls come ashore, they tend to have small micro-scale types of wind, meaning in addition to the large background 115-plus mile per hour winds, you get these smaller eddies, so mesovortices, smaller whirlwinds within the eye, but even something called tornado-scale vortices or tornado-like vortices that can be maybe 100 yards wide, tough to spot on radar, but they come through, they cause areas of exceptional damage, and something else called mini swirls. These might only be 10 to 15 feet wide, but they're little eddies, maybe 40, 50 miles per hour, like dust devils almost, that form inside the eye wall and spin around and move through the eye wall. But when you factor in a 40 mile per hour, 50 mile per hour wind from one of these weaker eddies, on top of 115, 120 mile per hour winds, you get swaths of Category 5-like damage or Category 5-like winds that are very narrow. And so winds will likely be erratic within the storm. They'll be changing. A lot of people have reported that they see objects thrown in different directions inside a hurricane eye wall, and these smaller scale winds are the result of that.
Well, again, Matt, I can't thank you enough for your help this morning with our team coverage. I'm going to leave you to let you go get some sleep here. Hopefully, we'll be able to have Matt back in a little bit later into the afternoon here. Maybe even a Twitter space conversation. I think that could be really fun. Of course, Matt, a prolific tweeter, so it might be fun to ask Matt some questions later on. We've got people in the chat here, Matt, all across our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere, that love your explanations and your technical analysis there. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, Matt, and stay safe. We'll be talking to you again here soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. All right. So how about that? That was exciting. Next, we are going to jump to the next member of the MyRadar team here. This man is on the ground in Louisiana. And what a past 24 hours this has been for MyRadar storm chaser Aaron Jayjack. Last I spoke with him, he is in Houma, Louisiana. We're working on connecting him in the back here. Before we connect with Aaron Jayjack, need I remind you again, as it stands right now, Damien, if there is a way that while you're connecting to Aaron, if you could pull up the radar while I'm talking. We are, last word here from the National Hurricane Center, 150 mile per hour maximum sustained winds. That's a doozy of a storm there, folks. Let me zoom on in here. You can see the eye of the storm is still off the coast, but boy, is it darn close there. In terms of preparation, the time is over for that, especially for the people that live along the coastline there. It's now kind of just a matter of making sure that you and yours stay as safe as you possibly can here. I hope that you took the advice from our partners at Flash. Again, hurricanestrong.org for the latest and greatest information on making sure your home is hurricane strong this hurricane season. So once we have MyRadar storm chaser Aaron Jayjack here, we will pull him in. Again, he is on the ground in Louisiana. We'll have a little conversation with Aaron here. And then after that, we will check back in with meteorologist Erica Lopez for the latest on all things Ida. Could be possible here that we may be sticking around with you for a little bit longer than we were initially anticipating, because Ida is hustling as it goes early this morning. So I think that we have Aaron in, and I think I can see him here on my monitor above. And let's pull him in here. MyRadar storm chaser Aaron Jayjack joining us live from, Aaron, you're in Houma, Louisiana, correct? That is pretty close to New Orleans.
Yeah, that's right. Houma, down to the southwest. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, can hear you just fine. Cool.
Yeah, I'm in Houma, Louisiana. It looks like it should be in the path of the eye. I've been using the MyRadar hurricane tracker to kind of, this has been a dynamic event here so far, with that track shifting a little bit west and a little bit east. And lately the trend has been back to the east. But I think last night it shifted a little bit more back to the west again. So looks like Houma, maybe Thibodeau, I think is the other town. I was just in there. It's a little bit more north of Houma. Looks like they could both be in that eye. And that shift to the east kind of puts New Orleans in a little bit more of a risk now. Earlier I was in Morgan City, spent the night there, which is about 30 miles further west. And with that shift to the east, that kind of brings New Orleans into that gauntlet of eastern eye wall as it wraps around. Just some of those eastern bands, the bands on that eastern side of the hurricane can be quite dangerous. So.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, we're talking, less than a year ago, you were in the same state, that being New Orleans, much farther to the west in Lake Charles, but you were dealing with the onshore effects of Hurricane Laura, of course, the eye making landfall much later in the evening, of course, into the overnight hours. But this part of the country, I mean, you want to talk about some, I guess bad luck over the past year or so. Here we go, another major hurricane about to make landfall.
Yeah, it's like the tube is pointed at Louisiana, and the hurricanes keep shooting out of it right at this coast. So it was Hurricane Laura last year was a big one, and then even Zeta, it clipped the eastern edge, even got parts of New Orleans, and so here we go yet again. The first major one to come impact the United States coastline this season, and already where's it going to start? Of course, it's coming right here to Louisiana.
Now, with your experience, Aaron, dealing with eye walls, with eye walls in general, we're talking about here in the middle of the day here, the fact that you likely are going to be able to, light dependent, see what's going on around you. What are you anticipating here with an eye wall here that could be boasting, 150 mile per hour plus winds as it makes landfall?
Yeah, so first you're going to get the first effects. Obviously, these bands are going to come wrapping in. And then that outer eye wall is going to come, and that's when things are going to that's when the hurricane force winds will likely really start picking up, and it just continues to get more intense as it progresses, as you get through that eye wall until you finally get to the eye. If I am in the center, one of the problems as a chaser that looks like with this storm is it's got a very small eye. It only looks about 15 miles wide right now. So it's a very small, narrow, spot there's not much room to get into it, right? And here in Louisiana, it's a lot of bayous, a lot of coastal marshes and whatnot. So there's only so many cities with potentially parking garages or safe structures to intercept them. And so it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds this afternoon. Even though this thing's zipping along, right? It looks like it could be here in the next couple of hours. Maybe it slows down. I'm not sure, but as we get into that eye, and hopefully if I get in the eye, you'll then experience that calmness of the storm, where the winds will die down. You go from hurricane force winds to essentially nothing. Light breeze, and if conditions are right and it's a strong hurricane, it should clear out that eye. Potentially have that clear eye and be able to have that stadium effect view. Although it seems like a lot of times with these storms down here in Louisiana, since I'm 30 miles inland from the actual coast, there's all coastal marsh to the south, they tend to get a little murky as they come over those coastal marshes and start to fill in, and they get the clouds fill in at the low levels. And so you lose that ability to see that calm, that wide open eye with that stadium effect, even with sun potentially coming through. I don't think that will likely happen. We won't have like sun coming through, but I don't know. Every storm's different. They're all their own beast, and you got to treat them with respect, and we'll see what happens here in the next couple of hours.
What have you seen this morning, Aaron, on the ground in New Orleans? Are people seemingly taking this seriously? Are you seeing things clearing out around you?
Well, so here in Houma, I did see people still evacuating out to the north towards New Orleans. Trying to move further inland. I still see there's people driving around. I even saw people walking around. I think there were some homeless people even. I think we're trying to get to a shelter perhaps. Just right here I'm in a parking garage right now. They got it closed off. I can't go up any higher. I'm on the first level, but there's a house here with these giant oak trees. I think they're oak trees. And I just saw a woman walking her dog in the front yard. So there are still people that are riding it out here in Houma. Gosh. And, one of the biggest concerns with these is the winds bringing down big trees on tops of houses. I'm a little concerned about this house and that person with these giant trees that are overhanging her house right now.
It's definitely not something to mess around with when you consider just the strength of the winds. But let alone that, Aaron, we're talking about a part of the country that, of course, 16 years ago dealt with one of the most historic hurricanes in the history of the United States, perhaps even meteorologically, that being Hurricane Katrina, which made landfall as a Category 3. But of course, the big storyline out of that was the inland flooding that came as a result of many factors, but nonetheless, it came from Hurricane Katrina. What are you anticipating here going forward here, as we're talking several feet of storm surge all across the southern border of Louisiana?
Well, one of the problems here is there's in this area, there's a lot of trees that are potentially going to block the roads. There's besides just the surge and the flooding, I'm expecting to be a lot of rain coming through this area, which could potentially cause flooding. And if trees are blocking roads, that's going to prevent people from being able to be rescued, if that flooding situation does occur. So those are some of that's one of my big concerns right now is, this area, if you are riding it out here, you need to be ready to, have supplies that can last several days, maybe a week or more, water and food, ways to charge your phone, although cell phone and cell towers and whatnot are likely going to get knocked out. I'm expecting the power for sure to be knocked out here in Houma, Thibodaux. I'm expecting New Orleans will likely have wide power outages as well. They're a little bit more inland, so if it comes across as a Cat 4, Cat 5, it should weaken some as it moves towards New Orleans. But I still would expect at the minimum in New Orleans will likely, depending on where the hurricane comes across landfall, if it's too far to the west, it may spare New Orleans. But if it is New Orleans isn't that path, you could easily get Hurricane Cat Force 1, Cat 1, Cat 2 winds coming out of this thing all the way up to New Orleans.
Yeah, I think we're in for a pretty active day. Let alone the folks that live along that coastline there. And it seems like all of the readings here on the dropsons there, Aaron, seem to point to this thing continuing to strengthen as it sits right there off of the coastline. So we're going to let you get going here, Aaron. A busy day out ahead of us here. The folks in the chat are talking about the cops there behind you. So we'll probably wrap things up here. But Aaron, stay safe. Of course, this will not be the last time that we will be hearing or seeing from you here. We look forward to seeing your coverage. And of course, stay safe. And we will be chatting again here again soon. Aaron, thank you so much for everything that you do. And the folks in the chat love you. So be safe out there. We'll be talking again soon.
Hey, everyone, and thanks. We'll look forward to getting some footage out to you guys in a bit here.
Cool. Thanks again, Aaron. All right. So we are probably going to end up wrapping this thing up here soon and then reassessing, being that this storm is, as you can see on the app there is really getting close now, but there is the possibility that it begins to slow down just a little bit before making landfall, but we will be here with you as it does. But I want to do one final check here with meteorologist Erica Lopez, the newest member of the MyRadar weather team. So Erica, you've been watching the storm there on the radar. You've heard from Matt, you've heard from Aaron Jayjack, who's going to be on the ground there. Can you believe, I mean, in less than a year covering Laura and now covering Hurricane Ida, wild stuff for Aaron there in Louisiana. But what's the latest? What are you seeing on the MyRadar app? I mean, the eye of the storm it's just right there.
Yeah, it's so well defined. It's right there, very close to the southern coast of Louisiana. We are also starting to see some of the rain bands also coming into New Orleans as well. We're waiting for the latest update from the NHC. It should be in any moment right now. Category 4, of course, Ida, 150 mile per hour winds, pressure down to 930 millibars. So it'll be interesting to see what aircraft recon has found and what they update it to with this next update. Of course, it'll come out any moment now as they do hourly updates closer to landfall. But yeah, seeing pretty impressive storm right here on our MyRadar app. And if we toggle on our watches and warnings, of course, anybody in these areas, if they have a mobile device that's charged, they can access this data, whether they don't have TV or anything. As long as their phone is on and they have cellular data, they can access all of this information, the radar, and even the watches and warnings. Of course, if there's any tornado warnings as well, you can see this on the app. But of course, we have watches, tropical storm warnings, and hurricane warnings as well. But of course, very impressive images here on our MyRadar app, and watching this very closely, Mike.
Yeah, Erica, this is certainly a developing system, one that over the course of the day yesterday, we kind of knew just chatting about this, that this was likely to become something to keep an eye on, of course, but going to bed last night, waking up early this morning, and just seeing the way that the structure of the storm has changed, the strength, I mean, it really took a big leap overnight last night. We're really talking about a beefy system there sitting in the Gulf of Mexico. But can you talk about why the Gulf of Mexico, why that is such a significant body of water when we're talking about this time of year? It's not exactly where you want these systems to get trapped, right?
Yeah, we just have extremely warm waters, especially this year compared to last year. Remember last year when we were tracking hurricanes, the water, you did have some areas that had some cooler water where it did have the possibility to not as strengthen as much, but with the water being so warm here in the Gulf of Mexico, especially during this time, this is why we get these rapidly intensifying storms over the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is the time of year. I mean, we're talking Saturday or Sunday, August 29th. I mean, this is kind of the time of year where we're talking about a Category 4 in the Gulf of Mexico. It's kind of the time of year it would make sense, right? It'd be one thing if we were talking about this in April. It wouldn't make any sense at all. But the Gulf, incredibly warm right now with sea surface temperatures in the mid to high 80s. I mean, when you're talking about winds right now as well, maximum sustained winds at 150 miles per hour, certainly enough to cause for some major damage there. But Erica, one final look at the track there. What are you seeing once this thing does make landfall, which could be here in the next couple of hours? What are you seeing in terms of the inland arrival of those winds? Because it seems as though, even though the folks on the coast will get the worst, inland flooding, tons of rain could still be on the way for folks in central Louisiana.
Oh yeah, for sure. As Ida makes landfall, it'll actually decrease, at least in terms of surface winds, as it gets more inland. But that doesn't mean there are no threats. We'll definitely have some life-threatening flooding for these areas. So if you have any family members down there, again, make sure that they have this app to keep up to date with all the latest. They'll get all the alerts, of course, in terms of flooding and even wind as well.
All right, Erica, thank you so much for that check-in on the app. Of course, Erica, the newest member of the team, let her know in the chat Let her know in the chat that she is welcome. Of course, you'll be seeing a lot more if you're across all of the MyRadar platforms. Erica, thank you so much. All right, let's, Damien, take a look at these graphics here I have before we say goodbye. And then I think we'll end up likely taking a very short break and then probably returning. It really all depends on... we are kind of on Ida's time now, folks. But I see you all in the chat watching from all over the world. So thank you so much for all of your comments. We got a super chat yesterday from somebody on YouTube. Of course, that being where you... can make a donation to ask a priority question in the chat. 100% of the proceeds from those super chats, for the record, goes to charity. So thank you very much for whoever sent that in to us yesterday. We really, really appreciate it. Frank Castle, according to Damien in the back there, and big shout out to Damien too, who's been putting in the extra hours too. Of course, you can see above my head here all of the MyRadar social media platforms. We are everywhere nowadays. Of course, we are streaming live across all of those platforms too. We are, of course, streaming live in the app as well. Well, Damien, let's jump right back into the graphics. Let's leave that up almost the entire time here. So, of course, we're talking about Hurricane Ida, a Category 4, potentially on the way, folks, to maybe even being a Category 5 hurricane. You can see the watches and warnings that are in place, but mainly we're talking about the warnings right now. Hurricane warnings, a tornado watch in effect underneath all of that too. It's easy to kind of forget about all of that. Looking at the water vapor imagery, this is something I want to talk with Erica about a little bit later this afternoon. But I mean, look, there's just nothing getting in the way of Ida here at all in terms of dry air. I mean, the Gulf is just cooking there, folks. The example I like to give is think about taking a pot of boiling water and putting it onto a stove that's already on, right? I mean, there's not going to be much of a drop-off from that water ceasing to boil. It's just going to keep boiling, right? Like making macaroni and cheese on the stove. Not going to be much drop-off time here. Look at those water temperatures, whew, especially off the coast of Texas there. Man, oh man, up near the low 90s. In terms of the storm surge, 12 to 16 feet, folks, that's a lot of water. That should not be where it's coming. So for the folks that live along the coastline, I'm sure that you are used to this. Of course, 16 years ago was Hurricane Katrina. At the time, a Category 3 at landfall. But remember, Hurricane Katrina at the time in the center of the Gulf there was a Cat 5. So it was a Cat 5. Didn't make landfall as a Cat 5 in New Orleans, but did make landfall as a Cat 3. Of course, the levees, that being the city's flood protection, did notoriously kind of fail in that particular instance, but I believe that they are well protected for well over 20 or so feet of storm surge. So this is going to be a good test, particularly for the city of New Orleans. But right now, Ida kind of working its way a little bit farther to the west of New Orleans, but nonetheless, that being the biggest metro area, we are definitely going to talk about it. But 12 to 16 feet of water, oof, that is a lot. So again, a Category 4 hurricane as it stands right now, it is really making time, folks. I mean, this is like getting on a flight and flying west, and you're picking up like an hour's worth of lead time here. We were anticipating initially Ida making landfall, maybe even into Monday morning, folks. Here we are. It's Sunday morning, 10 a.m., and we could be talking about landfall maybe even by noon today. I mean, really wild stuff how fast this thing is flying here. Now, into Monday morning, you can see the central time there. That'll be about midnight, of course, Eastern time. I mean, 80-mile-per-hour winds dropping off significantly, but still a Category 1 hurricane at that point, sitting on the eastern border of Louisiana and Mississippi. Even if you are not in the cone there, folks, for people that live in northern Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, it's going to be wet for the next several days here, folks. Very, very wet. So it's definitely something to keep in mind and watch out for any strong storms developing out of this as well. Looking at the live sweeping radar here, you can already see some early signs of rotation here right on that outer band. And that is, of course, to be expected. Remember, when we've talked about this before here, folks, when you look at a hurricane and you divide it into 4 quadrants, it is that right front quadrant right here where you're going to find the strongest winds. The reason for that being is because this thing rotates counterclockwise, right? So it's like swinging a baseball bat. This is where you're making contact with the ball. So, of course, that is where right there on that inflow, now we're getting messy. Let me clean all this up here. You are seeing the tornadic development. So definitely something to watch out for, let alone the strong winds, and of course the heavy rain. But there, of course, is the eye of Ida, so well defined on radar this morning. We were talking before about Grand Isle and the homes that are right here. Let me grab my measuring tool here, Damien. I've got to grab it. There it is. So we're going to go right from the eye wall to here. I mean, God, 23 miles, folks. I mean, you could do that in your car. Easy, you know? Wild stuff. That is not far whatsoever here. Looking at the high-resolution rapid refresh model. I'm sure you hear a lot about meteorologists talking about weather models. This is not the gospel, folks. This is just a tool that meteorologists can look at. We look at many different tools. It would be like giving a report without looking at all of the evidence that is out there. You can't just go by one thing. But I'm going to show you this particular model simply because it is a high-resolution model, meaning I can only go out so many hours, but the information that is available to me is incredibly detailed. So we'll start you off here. About an hour ago, I've got to adjust this graphic as you just saw. But here, let's, in real time here, you can see the graphic getting the best of me because the graphic is updating. Right there, if I can pause it, is roughly looking like a landfall-ish. Around noon to 2, that's looking like our window now, at least according to the HRRR here, is looking like our landfall south of Houma, which is where MyRadar storm chaser, Aaron Jayjack is. You just saw him not long ago. We will be reconnecting with Aaron throughout the day today. But there you can see as Ida makes its way inland and that eye begins to disappear, we're not out of the woods in terms of the ugly weather. Look at all that inflow coming in off the Gulf. I mean, just tapped in, folks, like a hose. And all these little individual little storms could be bringing with it, let alone some strong gusts of wind, but a lot of rainfall too. As I'm going to get to here in just a moment. You know what? Let's just jump to it. I'm just going to show it to you. This is a really wild graphic here. And of course, it's not up there. It is. Gotta love live productions, right? Do you see that number there over New Orleans there? 20+ inches? That's almost 2 feet of rain, folks. Let alone the fact that we're talking of 10 to near 15 feet of storm surge for folks that live along the coastline. I mean, feet of water coming from the sky and coming from the Gulf at the same time. Just a big mess, let alone the fact you're talking about some really destructive winds at the center of this thing. So some really, really nasty weather coming for the folks that live along the Gulf Coast there. I think, Damien, we've been going now for a good hour or so. I think we'll probably reconvene for us here before we get ready for our next live stream. But let me pull up the infrared imagery one more time here, Damien, and we'll take a look at that. I want to answer some questions in the chat. It's very likely that we'll end up spinning up a live stream here very soon, considering, I mean, just look at that thing. I mean, it's just wild just looking at it there. All right, so actually, you know what, Damien, before we wrap things up, let's take a look if you have that WeatherStem camera in Baton Rouge. Again, courtesy of our partners at WeatherStem. This is at Alex Box Stadium. This is where the LSU Tigers play their baseball. And this is, you know, inland Louisiana, but not much to see here other than it being very wet. Just some pea soup out there for the folks in the bayou. So we hope that folks in Baton Rouge there are heeding local warnings. And that goes without saying for anybody dealing with severe weather. Listen to local emergency officials. Those are the folks you should be listening to. Make sure all of your means of communication, that being your cell phone, tablet, what have you, are charged, ready to go. A mobile power bank is a great item to have, and make sure that it is charged. Make sure, of course, that you are well ready to go in case you do lose power from this. You saw not long ago that when meteorologist Erica Lopez was looking at the power outage layer in the app, they were really starting to roll in. So we're kind of just at the start of it here now. But we will be right here. We are going nowhere. We are just going to get ready here for our next live stream coming up here. Could be in a couple of minutes, but nonetheless, you can see our social media accounts. We've got them all listed right here below. Be sure to follow us there across everywhere. We will be going live across all of our platforms. And if you have any questions for myself, meteorologists Matthew Cappucci or Erica Lopez, or storm chaser Aaron Jayjack, please get them into the chat, and we will be sure to answer them as our day rolls on. But again, for all of the folks that are watching and that live along the Gulf Coast of the United States, please stay safe. It is going to be likely a very dangerous, long Sunday for you. 16 years to the day of Category 3 Hurricane Katrina making landfall in New Orleans. Here we are, Category 4 Hurricane Ida set to make landfall potentially within the next few hours here in Louisiana on August 29th, 2021. For all of us here on the MyRadar weather team, and for, of course, Damien in the back, big shout out to Damien. I have been meteorologist Mike Linden. We will be coming at you live here very shortly. But for now, stay safe. We'll see you soon.